Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining. I'm letting people find their way into our Zoom room. Apologies for the slight delay. I think you know that we have a new person joining our public engagement team here at NIF US. His name is Hillel Asaf, and you'll get to know him. And so this is our first webinar with our new team in place. I'm Libby Lenkinski. I'm Vice President for Public Engagement at New Israel Fund. It's an honor to welcome you to today's call. I see the numbers are still rising as people get situated. Welcome to NIF supporters from all over the US and Canada and Europe and Israel. I think the Australians did not join because it's the middle of the night. Welcome to you. I want to start. I'm going to start by welcoming you to our webinar called It's Time to Meet the Peace Camp. Thank you. Thank you for holding space in your hearts for hope. We know that these last 2 years and even just this last day has been heartbreaking and very challenging for many of us. And there are days where it's hard to find hope. But we wanted to put together this call to give ourselves a chance to breathe together, to believe in what we've been doing for all these decades, what we've been doing for all these months. And we wanted to showcase one of the most important and inspiring developments happening in Israel right now. I'm not trying to be Pollyannish or to paint a overly joyful picture when things are looking as dark as they are. But this weekend, we were part of organizing a truly monumental, enormous event called It's Time. It was a peace summit that took place mostly in Jerusalem. And tens of thousands of Israelis participated in it. And so we just wanted to not only sort of talk about this in an email, but actually invite you in to get a bit of a showcase and a sense from our partners and from us about what this event was and what people who attended it actually heard. So the It's Time Coalition is a coalition of over 60 organizations in Israel dealing with all kinds of issues. It's groups that do human rights, anti-occupation, civil liberties, climate, religious organizations, and more. And they joined forces in the immediate aftermath of October 7th and the ensuing war in Gaza with the aim of rebuilding the peace camp, rehabilitating the language of peace, of conflict resolution, of reminding people that war isn't an inevitability, that actually a resolution to the conflict is the inevitability, and empowering people on both sides to demand that, to demand an end of the hostilities, to an end to the conflict and a path to peace. It's no easy task, but we have been a proud and central partner for this movement, and we're really proud of the other partners that have been involved. For us, I want to sort of highlight two things before I introduce the speakers that are going to be joining me today. The two things are that while these are really challenging times in terms of advocating for policy solutions vis-a-vis government officials, it doesn't mean that there's nothing that can be done. And one of the things that is very important to build during these times is the kind of coalition that will bring about a new future. And that doesn't depend on whether the doors of, to the corridors of power are open to us or not. That just depends on us. And so this It's Time coalition and the Peace Summit that took place in Jerusalem is a glowing example of the kind of building that is possible even during these times. And the second thing that I want to just pull out before I even introduce our speakers is the fact that many of the people on the call have been with New Israel Fund and our partner organizations for many years, if not many decades. Last night, I was speaking at an NIF event in the suburbs of Philadelphia, in my hometown, actually, and there were I would say more than 10 people in the room who had been with NIF since the beginning, which we're talking about over 45 years. And one of the things that I'm really proud to talk about today is the fact that in the last 10 years since we launched our new initiatives for democracy, there really are new pieces of infrastructure for the progressive movement, the Peace Camp and its parts, for mobilization in particular. And so the coalition and the public-facing mobilization work that It's Time and others are doing is heavily based in research. It's data-driven, and the best minds of campaigning have access to the best tools for campaigning. And that's all stuff that's possible to test and work on now. And I think we're seeing some of the results of that very professionalized infrastructure for messaging and campaigning around peace in Israel. I say that because I know that many of the people on the call have supported those efforts over the years, and I think we're beginning to see the undercurrent of what they can deliver, even though the outward reality is so much worse than we ever imagined. The stage in Jerusalem included activists, advocates, politicians, musicians, and artists. And to that end, we invited our International Council member, Sha'annan Streett, a legend of Israeli music, the frontman of one of the best hip hop bands in the Middle East, and a peace activist. So Sha'annan will tell us a little bit about what it was like to perform from that stage. We have Sally Abed, a national leader of the Standing Together movement, an NIF grantee. Sally is an elected city council representative in Haifa, and a national leader in Standing Together. In recent years, she's become a prominent progressive Palestinian voice in Israel. She's a recurring guest on the Promise podcast and the co-host of our podcast that we partner with Almec to create, called Groundwork. We have Eran Nissan with us. He's the CEO of Mehazkim, and an Israeli peace activist. Prior to joining Mehazkim, Eran headed the Education and Advocacy Department at Peace Now, and has interned at the U.S. Congress as part of News Story Leadership. Eran, some would say, and by some I mean me, has a very promising future as a political leader in Israel as well. And Tami Yakira, who is the main organizer and leader of the coalition. She's Shatil's human rights organizer and coordinator, and she previously coordinated Women Wage Peace Movement, which is an alliance for Jewish Arab women calling for peace. She's been involved in organizing struggles for equality and social justice, and was one of the initiators of the Parents Against Kahanism movement, which was a very important initiative to try to stop Kahanism from entering the school system. So these are going to be our speakers, and without further ado, I'm going to invite Sha'annan, my main man, Sha'annan Streett. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's get right to it.
My pleasure.
Tell us what the scene was like and what this event was like for you, please. And hey, what's up? Nice to see you.
Hello, hello, hello. I'm happy to be here. As you said, it was a special event on Friday. I also performed in the one in Tel Aviv about a year ago. This one was more special. First of all, because I'm from Jerusalem, so you know it's a tougher town for these type of events, but it was a success. But more than that, because for the first time, at least in the recent past, I felt that we were aiming to make something that's more than just speeches, 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 song, speeches, 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 song. There were a whole bunch of rooms there with stuff for kids to imagine how it would be if there would be peace. They were like painting together. There was plays, and also there was a proper music venue which had shows, musical shows with Israeli and Palestinian artists from 10 a.m. to about 4:30 p.m. when we had to close the event because it's Jerusalem and you have to close in time for Shabbat. But all through the day there was music, live music, and I was very happy that we could bring musicians that aren't the usual suspects. And part of the reason that I feel that we could bring them is because I personally promised them that they won't be on the same stage with the speakers and the politicians, because it's weird. I'm being brutally honest now. Even if sometimes if a musician, even if he agrees with something that a speaker or a politician will say, he doesn't want to be in the same frame sometimes, like most of us, not all of us, but most of us are like that. And we feel like, this is music. And of course we support peace, but we don't want like there's some sort of mistrust maybe of the political world. And so for that reason, I think it really assisted to have a proper music venue. Also, by the way, side note, my friend Carmi, who produced the whole event actually, he put two stages, one on each side of the room. They were facing each other. It was a pretty big hall. And the music just continued because when one band finished, on the other side of the hall, the crowd just had to turn around. And on the other side of the hall, another show started. And was because a lot of times in these types of festivals, the change between the bands, it takes too long. So this way he managed to eliminate that. And it was a good. So the piece, the artistic peace movement has a lot of new ideas, even in terms of how the shows look. And it was a good time. I also came out pumped with ideas of how to make it better next time, which is a good sign, even if I forget them next week. The fact that it had something moving in me and gave me, it gave me, it, it, it moved me in a productive way. And I think that's a feeling that a lot of people who were there share.
When you talk about Carmi's vision about the two stages, I'm imagining some epic rap battles. Uh,
So when we finished, exactly Saz started, you know, and uh, and right after Saz, I can't remember who it was, but it was on the either side of the stage, and the crowd had to turn around, and the sound people were right in the middle of the venue. So it was a special event. I liked it.
Thank you for sharing all of that. I have another question.
Hmm.
In addition to being the most active and productive person that I know on this planet, I always tell people, Sha'annan just like throws out ideas. He's like, maybe I'll forget it in 2 weeks. That's not going to happen. What is going to happen is 6 months from now, somebody's going to call me and tell me Shannon's doing this thing. And I'll be like, the thing he said on the call. Um, and you've also like, you've had a huge career and you still have a huge career in music in Israel and around the world, and you've never shied away from making your opinions about peace, about social justice, about Jerusalem being the superior city, about all kinds of things. I won't say some of the others, but you've been
Hmm.
very direct about your politics. And I want to know what you think the role of artists and musicians is right now around that.
Okay, so right now, first of all, right after October 7th, HaDag Nahash and we had dozens and dozens of shows all over this country. It was in army bases and hospitals and for injured, but also for evacuees in hotels and in wherever they were put for long, long months. And we actually saw and felt how art and music can really, really heal, not just as a slogan. When we performed for the evacuees from Kibbutz Kfar Aza, which was a kibbutz, one of the kibbutzim hit hardest, and suddenly we see around us 50 to 100 people, members of the kibbutz, on stage with us, screaming the words and dancing. And these are the same people that lost their loved ones, you know? And so when you can help somebody feel his or her humanity again, maybe as if this never happened, or maybe they're thinking, one day I can feel like this again, and I'm feeling I'm just a participant in a musical show right now, and it's giving me power to live. So that's how I see. So we definitely felt the healing power of art and music, and what I coined the phrase cultural first aid. That's what we were doing back then in in the months just after October 7th, and now we're doing cultural physiotherapy because it's not first aid anymore, luckily for most of the people. But definitely, my band and I were having master classes all over the Gaza envelope with youth and also with grown-ups, and helping them try and make something beautiful out of all that pain that's inside them on the personal level and also on the community level. Last week we were in Sderot for the ending event of our first workshop seminar. Anyway, I don't want to go on too much about this stuff, but the point is the role for art and for culture now is one of healing, of togetherness, and of, I would say, a common subconscious, helping tighten the screws of our common subconscious, the things that make us feel the same. That's what art and culture can do. And that doesn't mean that you don't say what you think. That doesn't mean, I would say, even on the contrary. You know, the first shows that we did, I think it was October 9th or 10th, we didn't know what should we do with these people, you know, who's, this was in front of, I remember, in front of evacuees from Be'eri, another kibbutz that was hit extremely hard. And we were there like 3 days after they were evacuated. And we met people that later, in the weeks to follow, were famous in every house in Israel because their stories were so tragic that they made it to the news. And we met many more people that their stories weren't tragic enough to make it to the news. But believe me, their stories were tragic. And we didn't know, what are we going to do here? Should we sit down? Should we do it acoustic? I mean, and for the first two shows, we actually did sit down and we did play it acoustic. But then we understood that what these people want is a HaDag Nahash. They want what they know and what they love. They want the possibility to dance and, like I said earlier, scream the lyrics. And when we performed for soldiers, we performed our songs. Our songs have a certain political message, a certain social view. And we didn't change even one word because, I don't know, music has that power. It has that power. And if your body's moving, you feel better. You feel like a human. You feel like there's something else to your life than just despair. And in a weird, weird way, the lyrics are kind of less important. Even though we're saying what we mean, in these shows, the lyrics were less important. It really was more about an uplifting feeling and for the crowd for understanding that they will have this feeling again. They will be uplifted again after all these tragedies. And we were like living proof that they can still feel these feelings. And also, after every show, dozens of people came and spoke to me. I collected many of these stories, by the way. I wrote a journal. For the first 52 benefit shows that we had, I wrote a journal and then I got tired. But I'm sure we approached about 100 by now. We have one tomorrow. It's not finished. The work
Mm.
isn't finished. And I guess I guess it made me feel better about my career path in a way, you know.
Well, I feel very good about your career path.
I feel good about your career path.
And I'll tell, thank you for sharing all of that. I also will say that I have a podcast with the forward. Sha'annan was the first person I interviewed, and he tells a lot of stories about the experience of playing in the kibbutzim and for bereaved and displaced people in Israel. And as soon as I finish asking questions, I'll put a link to it in the chat so you can hear more from Sha'annan. I want to thank you for sharing all of that with us. I'll say that a man approached me after a film screening recently and told me that he was a bereaved father and said, how can I see the humanity in others when I feel that I've lost my own humanness? And I said, wow, that's really powerful. And he said, no, I'm asking you, how can I? Like,
Wow.
he wanted a to-do list from me of how to do that. And I told him, who's your favorite band? What's your favorite poem? Go back to that if you want to find your humanness. So I thank you for bringing our humanity back to us, Sha'annan. And with that, I want to turn to you, Sally, because you moderated and hosted like what I would think of as the most political, central conversation that happened at the Peace Summit. I will share with our people exactly what it was called. There are partners and there is a path, political solutions to emerge from the abyss. And you had on the panel former Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, former PA Foreign Minister Nasser Al-Kidwa. They talked about a peace framework that they've developed. I mean, that's a big question to bite off for a panel, and I'm wondering what you heard. And did you get any answers that you can share with us that maybe 7,000 or 8,000 people heard in the room, but we would like to hear from you today?
So, hi everyone. Hi, Libby. I'm going to focus actually, yes, I mean, we heard amazing initiatives, some that have been there for some years now, some that are newer. And obviously we saw, a Palestinian former minister and a former prime minister, Israeli prime minister, actually talking about a very real framework that they are developing, that they're collaborating on with very realpolitik, very good realpolitik. And obviously that's extremely important and very hopeful. But I'm going to be very honest here that there are amazing think tanks and policy centers and research departments and prestigious schools who are, studying the conflict and studying the viability of solutions and how it would look like, and partitions and, all of these different things. And I want to say the problem is not really the lack of solutions. It is the fact that the majority of the people in Israel, Palestine, but also around the world has lost, the ability to believe that, or let alone imagine that kind of solution. And that's where the value of these kind of initiatives come in, especially when it's led by people from Israel, Palestine. I think it's about reviving the story and the political imagination of peace. It's not about the necessity of the partition and how it would look like, because I do think in many ways we have to go through many other steps before we get there, and that's an understatement. But I think what was beautiful there is to experience our ability as a camp to do that to the Israeli public, to the Palestinian public, and to the world. And to remind ourselves that we do have that. We do have these amazing leaders who are, dreaming, who are, what is a leader is one who is a couple of steps away, but who is not, too far that you can't see them, right? But you can actually, it's tangible. And I think that's exactly what that panel provided us. And it's exactly what our camp needs, and not only the camp, what the public that we're trying to lead and change needs.
What do you say when people ask about partners? Who are the partners?
That's exactly the problem. So we have the solutions and the political imagination, and then the main question is when people say that, it's like, oh, there's no solution. It's like, no, there are actually many ways that can happen. And then they're like, oh, there's no partner, right? Like, who do you want to make peace with? And I think there are two things that you need to do in that instance, especially for the Israeli public. You know, it happens to be the public that I organize. As a Palestinian, I think I have a very special role in that sense, right? One is showing them the Palestinian partners on the other side. I think obviously we have these people around us. We also see them at many of the amazing cross-border organizations and movements that we also had at its time and within our camp, and they are very evidently there, right? Just Palestinian border partners from the West Bank, from Gaza. But I think also as you know, as an Israeli elected public official, you know, who insists on being Palestinian, on assuming responsibility over the Palestinian collective and my identity and my history and who I am, but also at the same time demanding, you know, being part of the Israeli society and leading the Israeli society, I think that really creates a very deep shift in how people view Palestinians and what partner means. And I think it gives me much more credibility when we talk about a Palestinian partner and what does Palestinian mean. So that's one thing, obviously. And the second thing is really there's no partner is understanding, trying to give them the mirror, you know, picture of, okay, we see Hamas right now, and we see, you know, very extreme, violent, you know, leaders on the other side. They don't represent the people. Does Ben Gvir represent the Israeli public? Is he the partner? And I think that's a very, usually a very effective argument for people.
Yeah, I think I'll tell you. Well, actually, I know that I know that I'm short on time, and so I just want to, before going too far down this rabbit hole, which I always want to talk to you about for like hours, I want to ask you to recommend to us from the stages that Sha'annan mentioned. I'm curious who you and your partner and your baby were dancing to.
Okay, I didn't get to any of the music at all because I had a baby who was, I wish I enjoyed it. I mean, I love them all, but I honestly haven't watched any. I didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to, unfortunately. I did go to the baby's show afterwards. There was a baby's performance, which she did not enjoy because she's 8 months old, but I enjoyed it, like pretending like she enjoyed it, like I'm a mother of a kid that's enjoying that. So that was nice. It was beautiful. It was just, you know, it was very, the spectrum of the needs of everyone that was there was just very nice.
Well, so Mazal Tov on the baby, and also I wanted to pull out from what you said, that I think one of the things that is so important to keep reminding ourselves and other people is what you just said. Israelis are not Netanyahu, they're not Ben Gvir, Palestinians are not Hamas, Americans are not Donald Trump. We are not all only the worst part of our extremist leadership. And when I think about what you are accomplishing with Standing Together, and also what you all have been accomplishing with It's Time, it's really about showing everyone that. And it's such an important thing that we all need to be reminded of all the time, that just like we're not our worst, they're not their worst.
That's a very important realization for us for ourselves, but also obviously to the public while we're organizing and we're talking. But I think, you know, from my standpoint as, you know, a movement, a grassroots movement, you know, that's building the political will, you also need to provide the alternative for the Israeli public, right? And not only provide them with the alternative that is very competitive. It's a competitive idea that is so compelling, that is actually there, that they want to like, yes, that's what I want. That's the different path that we want, because we are stuck. We are literally paralyzed with this abyss of like all of this unfathomable human suffering is just necessary, you know? And like we want people to be like, no, peace is security. This is what necessary. But in order to do that, we also need to organize people. We need to do it on the grassroots level every day and every night. And that's what also, you know, it's about these moments, these momentous moments, like that it's time. But it's also about the everyday of our work that is just organizing people and making people realize that we are actually more powerful than the people that don't represent us. And that's, I think, the most crucial, that's the most crucial and most difficult mission that we have at this point.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us and sharing, and for all the work. I always, ever since this happened, I always have to embarrass you with it, which is I was moderating a panel with Sally and her co-director, Alonli Green, just a few weeks after October 7th in New York City. And our friend, a Pulitzer Prize winning author, Michael Chabon, texted me saying, when I hear Sally speak, it's like a fork hitting crystal. That's how clear. And I think of it every time I moderate you since. And so thank you for sharing all of your clarity today and all days. I'm going to move to you, Eran.
To go. I'm not going to stay for the Q&A. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for the participants, for the you know, Tami and Eran, and thank you, Libby. I'm gonna go.
Thank you. So, Eran, tell us from your okay, the work of Mehazkim is a very good example of the kind of new infrastructure that I was talking about. Before you, we didn't have this kind of like broadcastability on social media. We knew that social media is like this alternate reality where people are spending a lot of their time, but we were still just like organizing them only in the streets. And then came Mehazkim, and we learned about the power of the internet and social media through you and all of what you've accomplished. And I want you to just share with me a little bit about what you think was so significant about the Peace Summit and the work of building this camp in general.
So I find the magic in logistics, because like you had Sha'annan talking about the energy in the room, but like the production, I really, it resonated with me. The fact that there was thought put into what we're going to do with the people when people are changing the guitars and the speakers, and how the producers and orchestrated by Tami designed the space and created spaces for children and created the panels and created this richness that you go through this conference or event or summit, but it's more like a festival because everything is happening and you need to choose where to be. And for us at Mehazkim, we knew that it's really important what's happening on Friday, but it's more important what we're going to do on social media afterwards. And the fact that we connect the social media aspect of it to make sure that there's enough cameras and the sound is well, and that we have the campaign not ending on the day of the event, but we have the plan on the weeks to come. And I think that from our end, in order to really turn this series of events or this coalition or this the literal trend, like meaning of a movement, we want to create a movement towards, we need to create a charismatic story. And social media is a really good instrument to create this kind of story. No pun intended, because we uploaded a lot of stories, like Instagram stories from the event, but it's about addressing the, I will say, misconceptions about the Israeli peace camp. one of the missions of its time is to demonstrate not only the political imagination and the fun and the fact that the Israeli peace camp is more, it's bigger and wider and deeper and more diverse than people assume, but the fact that you can see that the amount of young people on Friday, it was inspiring. And people were talking about it all around me. The richness of the camp, the fact that the representatives of a very, very diverse coalition, it was something that was very, very powerful. And this is the story that we need to tell. And I think at the beginning in your opening, you talked about how we developed this professional infrastructure, this ability to test messaging and to know what we're doing. And in Mehazkim, we have a very powerful megaphone, but it's also a professional question about what voices, what stories do you want to emphasize and empower and amplify. And in these kind of spaces, usually we talk about speaking truth to power. But as I experienced this is not about speaking truth to power, because I assume that power knows what's going on. And this is about speaking truth to ourselves. And not only the bad stuff, but also the good stuff. But if we're working on the negative side a little bit, to try to hold that space of talking about hope and enthusiasm and peace and celebration, but also pain and trauma and tragedy and war that is going on. And I'm just gonna end. There's the Ezra Klein show, like the podcast, and they uploaded an interview with Margaret Atwood. And there's a quote from The Handmaid's Tale, and she's talking about the difference between ignorance and ignoring. And in order to ignore, you need to put in effort. You need to invest energy in order to ignore. And I think that what we're trying to do on social media in the streets is to help people move, because we can't ignore what's going on, but to have something that is charismatic, like Sally said, that is recruiting, that is inspiring, that people want to be a part of.
So, what are the most convincing messages and stories? I'm asking that because many people on this call and many people who are like us ask me every day, how do I talk about this when it comes up in my kid's school or in my shul or at my office? And so I want to know from you, what are the most convincing messages? And I know that the context in the US and around the world is different, but for you, for Israelis.
So again, this is maybe will be a little bit, I find the magic in logistics. I like the theory of it is something that is for me very, very powerful, because this is my profession, this is my work, and I see it like a musician. You ask Sha'annan, and he understands music and the mathematics of it and all the moves, and you can treat music like a recipe, like something that is very, very dry, but when you do it for a long time, you find the magic in all these moves. And for me, the thing that I found the most powerful, it's the generational perspective. And this is based in theory. There's a German sociologist named Karl Meinheim, and he developed this theory of generations. And he's talking about the identity of a generation, the fact that you remind yourself what generation you belong to. And when you invoke the generational identity, it can create a social movement. And for me, as a member of a generation that was born during the first Intifada and grew up during the second Intifada, and that is paying the highest price in our lives in this current war on both sides, Israelis and Palestinians, a generation that is a victim of failed governments and failed leaders that are holding up to their chairs and teaching us to fear and hate and sending us to kill and die. And when you remind people that we have a generational responsibility, but also that we have power, and with great power comes great responsibility, like Spider-Man's uncle taught us. The fact that I would encourage people to invoke the generational perspective and generational responsibility, and to start from a conflict that we passed to our children is a conflict we lost. And for me, for my generation, we inherited this conflict. But I know in the last 2 years, and especially in the last year and a half, there's a generational awakening, political awakening of young Israelis and young Palestinians that understand that we deserve better.
Thank you. In addition to always kind of saving me from despair, I'll also tell everyone that Eran is very humble. He's also like a medic and saved my life by getting me a COVID vaccination when I was stuck in Israel during COVID and there were no flights. And who do you call when you need somebody in a crisis? You call Eran, and he steps in and helps, and indeed is a mastermind of logistics and bureaucracy, and so much more. Thank you very, very much. Tami, I want to ask you, as like really one of the, if not the primary architect of this whole thing, then one of, what made you, like, where did this idea come from? And did you ever imagine that it would turn out this big?
So thank you. First of all, I must say I'm so glad to be here and to listen to all the wonderful people that spoke before me and to see the summit through other eyes. And it sounds amazing. So thank you for this. Well, actually, the idea for the It's Time Coalition emerged shortly after the war began. The truth is, it first came after watching the Resettle Gaza Messianic Conference at Binyanei Hauma, the International Convention Center in Jerusalem, January 2024. It was just weeks after the trauma of October 7th, and already they were gathering to plan the reoccupation and resettlement of Gaza. And I watched the live stream, and literally I felt sick. That very day, I got COVID. And then in my feverish haze, I started imagining a completely different kind of conference, a summit of peace, stage filled with peacemakers, space to imagine a future beyond endless war, a massive and powerful show of strength, of hope, of peace, of the peace camp. So this is really, it's like an anecdote, but this is where it began for me. And then soon after, a group of leading peace organizations, and peace leaders, peacemakers, we came together and founded the It's Time Coalition, which today, as you said, Libby, consists of over 60 organizations. We felt that while extreme voices were shaping reality, those of us who believe in peace, equality, shared life were paralyzed, fragmented, silenced, and we realized we needed to build a shared force and synergy, really bring all the forces together. And this is what led to the formation of our coalition. Our first major event was at Menorah Stadium in Tel Aviv on July 1st, 2024. Under the taglines, "It's time to end the war, to bring the hostages home, and to make peace." And the goal was to reignite the political imagination, to remind people that wars end and after wars, peace can come, and to demonstrate the strength and presence of the peace camp. And then in December 2024, we wanted to organize another big event, this time in the north, but the war was still raging and rockets, sirens going off in Haifa every day. We understood we couldn't hold a large rally, so instead we launched the People's Peace Journey, a 6-day journey from Shfaram in the north to Netiv HaAsara in the south, 14 smaller events along the way, and when we ended the journey in Netiv HaAsara, we announced the next big step, the People's Peace Summit in Jerusalem. And so as it was already been told here, just a week ago, we held the summit itself. And the first day included dozens of events across Jerusalem, tours and the film festival in the Cinematheque and in Sam Spiegel. It's a film school in Jerusalem, and cultural gatherings and live music. And then the second day was the main event, which took place in Binyanei Hauma, the very same stage where that earlier conference of to resettle Gaza was held. Remember my feverish haze. So this was kind of closing the סגירת מעגל. How do you say in English?
It's closing a circle. It's closing a loop.
So this time it looked entirely different than that conference of the settlers. Binyanei Hauma were packed with thousands of people who believe in a different future, a future of peace and reconciliation. people who came to say there is another way, and we are the ones who can build it. We were Israelis and Palestinians, Jews and Arabs, women and men, old and young. As Eran said, so many young people. It was really amazing to see. We spoke about everything that hurts so much these days, the unbearable reality in Gaza, the starvation, the endless war. We had twice as many political leaders on stage than we did in Menorah, so we did show how we are growing with our political power. We even had a message from Macron, the French president, and a greeting from Abu Mazen and more. People on stage expressed raw, painful, even radical truths, but still somehow, through the anger and grief, we found ourselves filled with hope and belief. You asked Libby if we expected the summit to be so big. Well, truly, I didn't anticipate it to be that big, but maybe we should have. I think people are yearning for this alternative, and when we create a genuine space with bold and hopeful vision, they show up.
Amen. And I hope that they continue to. I will say, I was telling Tami earlier that like, we all know about the algorithms, but at least my own Facebook was just full of different things that were happening as part of this. And I have to say that even for cynical me, it really managed to feel like something new may be happening. And towards that, I want to bring in a question for both of you, Eran and Tami, which is coming from my dear friend Monica. And she's asking, like, Sally talked about the amazing leaders and things happening in civil society and NGOs and at the grassroots, but how can we make inroads with the formal leadership, including in the US? Like, how do we use this to pierce what feels sometimes like an impenetrable barrier between us and the people in power today, actually in both countries, but feel free to comment on it as it relates to Israeli leadership, but also if you have thoughts about how we could be using this vis-a-vis our own leaders here in the US.
I will say that leadership can be replaced. Contrary to the current Israeli prime minister, since I turned 18, I started voting, and every time I went to vote, at the end, Netanyahu was prime minister, except one time, one government. We see how the Israeli government is suffering from a legitimacy deficit. Also, the Palestinian leadership, and the first 100 days of Donald Trump has broken the record of negative perception of its policies and what he's doing. And we have political opportunities that we can capitalize on. I think that it's between those opportunities that we're doing our work. And when I was preparing to this panel, I remembered a poem that Tami showed me, and I used ChatGPT to translate it. I'm sending it to Connor so he can put it in the chat so everyone will see. And I think it relates to what can we do to pierce the message. And it's called "When I'm Drowning" by Tali Versano Eisman. And it's, when I'm drowning, I don't need you to describe the water to me, not its color, not its depth, for I can feel it up to my neck. I have just one request. Don't stop even for a moment describing to me what the shore looks like. And this is this is the thing that we can do. And there are people, maybe members of Congress, maybe senators, maybe people that can influence President Trump. I don't have a lot of faith in the current Israeli government and coalition. I am very, very firm in my belief that we need elections, that no good development in the region can come with this current government. But the times, they are changing.
I have some thoughts about who should maybe run in those elections. NIF is a 501c3. We don't support any particular candidate or any particular party. I'm just saying new leadership would be welcome. Tami, anything to add?
Yeah, I just like to add one more thought. I agree with Eran, and I think we should remember that wars end and governments can be replaced. And what we need to do, I think, and this is one thing about the missions of its time, as I see it, as we see it, is building this political base who demands its leaders to carry the political flag up high and be proud of it and demand peace and demand political solutions to the conflict. And I think we can see it. We see that when we give our leaders, our political leaders, stages with thousands of people applauding them when they speak about peace, then they come to speak about peace. And when we do not give them these stages, they do not speak about this. And this is one of the things I believe its time is doing. And I think we can see this movement. And as I said earlier, more political leaders joined us this time, and they spoke firmly and bravely and they were not ashamed and did not try to, letashtesh their opinions.
To blur or to, obscure their political opinions.
Exactly. So, yeah.
I want to thank both of you. I also want to thank Sally and Sha'annan for sharing their experiences with us about this day. And I hope that that our NIF supporters from around the world understand that we wanted to bring this to you in a kind of to get some atmosphere about what it was like, and not just to see the pictures and read our emails. Not because we believe that any one event is going to change the course of history, but because sometimes when we talk about what the building can look like during a time that feels so dark, when we're just reading endless headlines of crisis, it feels like a fire hose for so long at this point, that actually there's real strategy behind putting forward these kinds of ideas at this time, and that we are so committed to continuing to expand the platforms for that, whether it means that Carmi's going to have 8 rap battle stages, or Mehazkim adds another 1 million Facebook followers, to keep, I love this poem, to keep showing what the shore can look like, because we can't get there if we can't imagine what it looks like. And I so applaud you. I so wish that I had been there. I wish that all of us could have been there. And I hope that we can continue to bring some tastes of what this movement is doing to our communities around the world, because it also helps us. It helps us to be able to talk about this opposition, this growing force in Israel that's calling for peace. So thank you. Thank everyone who's on this call for being with us today, and for your ongoing, never-ending, determined, generous support of New Israel Fund. We thank you. And to Hillel Asaf for organizing his first webinar as part of the US Public Engagement Team. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.